They buried it at midnight. No ceremony, no witnesses. Just one man, one blade, and a secret so dangerous. They decided the earth was the only thing trusted enough to hold it. That sword has been in the ground for 2,000 years. And what it was protecting has never been fully explained. Across ancient Africa, 5 swords were buried, not lost, not forgotten. Deliberately hidden, each one connected to a power, a kingdom, or a secret that someone so where-to-dead the world was not ready to know. This is their story. And by the end of this video, you will understand why some of them were never meant to be found. Before iron became a tool, it was a god. In ancient Africa, from the Nile to the Niger, from the Great Lakes to the Sahel, the forging of iron was not a craft. It was a sacred act. The blacksmith was not just a craftsman. He was a priest, a keeper of dangerous knowledge. The Yoruba called the god of iron Ogun. Yigbo understood iron as a covenant between the earth and the living. The Nubians of ancient Kush, whose industry preceded Rome's, understood the forge as a portal between the seen world and the unseen. And the swords they made were not simply weapons. They were vessels, charged, coded, consecrated. So when a sword was buried, it was not because it had failed. It was because it had succeeded and its work was not yet done. The first sword. It is believed by Yoruba oral tradition, passed through generations of Agojie priests, that a S.R.D. was forged specifically for a covenant between the first Alaafin of the Oyo Empire and Ogun, the deity of iron and war. According to tradition, this was not a sword made to fight. It was made to bind. It is said that with this sword an agreement was sealed, that as long as the sword remained whole and hidden, Oyo would not fall. Oyo fell in 1836. Some historians cite internal division. Others cite slave trade collapse. Others point to the Fulani Jihad pressing from the north. But Yoruba oral keepers have long said something different. They say the sword was moved. Allegedly, and this is contested, a faction within the Ogboni society removed the sword from its consecrated burial site in the years before Oyo's fall. Some say it was to protect it. Others say that removing it was the very thing that broke the covenant. Was the fall of Oyo connected to the movement of this blade? It is believed by some. And what they believe has never been fully disproven. The second sword. And this one is different, because we know who carried it. Her name was Amanirenas, queen of the Kushite kingdom of Meroe. One-eyed, fearless, and the only African ruler in recorded history to defeat the Roman army on African soil and force Rome to negotiate a peace treaty on her terms. It is recorded Roman historian Strabo himself at Amanirenas led her armies personally, that she fought in battle, that she lost one eye in combat and continued fighting. Rome sent 3 legions. She sent them back. But here is what is less known. After the peace treaty was signed, Amanirenas reportedly had her personal battle sword buried, not displayed, not preserved in a tomb, buried in secret, in an undisclosed location. According to some Nubian oral traditions, allegedly the sword was buried because it had absorbed something in battle that made it dangerous to keep above ground. Some traditions say that sword still lies beneath the Nubian desert. Some say it has been found quietly reburied by those who found it. We may never know which story is true, but we know Amanirenas was real, and the power she carried was unlike anything Rome had faced before. The third sword. This one you may have heard of, but not like this. Sundiata Keita, the Lion King of Mali, the man who rose from paralysis to conquer an empire, the man who defeated Sumanguru Kante, a sorcerer king, the Battle of Kirina in 1235. They tell you about his courage. They tell you about his army. But what the Griots also say, and this is the part the history books leave out, is that Sundiata carried a sword that was not made by any blacksmith in his kingdom. It is believed, according to Mande oral tradition, recorded by Griots, that the sword was given to Sundiata's lineage by a blacksmith priest who had received the iron formula in a vision, that the blade was forged during a specific celestial alignment, that before battle it was not sharpened, it was spoken to. After Sundiata's death, the sword reportedly disappeared. Not stolen, not lost in battle, deliberately removed from the royal treasury by the Griots themselves. They said they buried it because a weapon like that in the wrong hands would not build empires. It would end them. The Griots chose to bury the power rather than risk its misuse. Was that wisdom? Or was it the greatest act of suppression in West African history? Think about what that means. The Griots, the memory keepers of the Mali Empire, decided that some knowledge was too powerful for the world to hold. They chose to bury it, and they chose not to tell anyone where. Now ask yourself this question: how many other keepers made the same decision? How many swords, how many weapons, how many truths were deliberately buried by people who believed the world wasn't ready? And here is the harder question: were they right, or did they steal something from us that we deserve to inherit? Leave your answer in the comments. Because I have read thousands of responses on this channel, and I have never seen a simple answer to that question. The fourth sword. This one belonged to a woman. Or more precisely, it belonged to many women. The Agojie, the all-female royal warriors of the kingdom of Dahomey. The women European soldiers called with fear in their voices, the Dahomey Amazons. They were not symbolic. They were the most elite fighting force in the kingdom, trained from childhood, celibate by oath, feared by every neighboring state. And among them, it is recorded in both Dahomeyan oral tradition and in the accounts of French soldiers who faced them in the 1890s. There was one blade that was never used in combat. One sword, allegedly the original blade of the first Agojie commander, that was carried into every battle but never drawn. It is believed that this sword was the covenant sword of the Agojie, the physical proof of the oath every warrior made upon joining. And when Dahomey fell to France in 1894, the Agojie did not surrender that sword, according to oral tradition passed through surviving Agojie lineages. The sword was buried the night before the final French assault, so that it could not be taken, so that the oath it embodied could not be destroyed. Some believe it is still there, waiting, in the same ground where the oath was made. The fifth sword, this is the one I have been building toward, because this one has no name attached to it, no kingdom, no warrior. It was discovered, allegedly, during excavations near the shores of Lake Turkana in Kenya. Carbon dated to approximately 400 BCE, the blade itself is not unusual for the era. What is unusual, what has never been fully explained, is what surrounds it. 17 objects arranged in a geometric pattern so precise that when researchers mapped it, it matched a star formation visible from that exact location on the night of the spring equinox. The sword was not buried randomly. It was buried at a specific moment in time, aimed at the sky. Some researchers believe this was a star map burial, a practice found in other ancient cultures, using burial site geometry to encode astronomical knowledge for future generations. Others believe it was a spiritual locking mechanism, the sword buried with its point directed at a specific star to transfer its power upward rather than downward. Neither interpretation has been proven, but both carry the same implication. Whoever buried this sword was not just hiding a weapon, they were sending a message across 2,000 years to whoever was paying attention. Are you paying attention? I want you to answer this in the comments. If you found one of these swords, would you want to know what it was buried to protect, or would you leave it where it was? Because I think your answer says something important about who you are. And I want to read every single response. 5 swords, 5 secrets, 2,000 years of silence. And here is what strikes me most when I sit with these stories long enough to feel their weight. Every single one of these swords was buried by someone who loved what they were protecting. The Yoruba priest who buried the covenant blade loved Oyo. The Nubian who buried Amanirenas' sword loved a queen who fought with one eye and refused to bow. The Griots who buried Sundiata's blade loved the empire enough to deny it to those who might have destroyed it. The Agojie warrior who buried the oath sword loved an order of women who had given everything. And the unknown keeper at Lake Turkana loved something we don't even have a name for yet. They did not bury these swords because they gave up. They buried them because they believed in something larger than the moment they were living in. They believed that one day, someone would come who was ready. 2,000 years later, here you are. The swords are still in the ground. The powers they protected are still waiting to be claimed. The only question is, are you ready? If this story moved you, if it made you feel the weight of what was buried and why, then you already know why this channel exists. Ancient African history does not deal in noise. We deal in the stories that were protected at great cost, the stories that someone decided the future deserved to hear. Subscribe and ring the bell, because the next story we are uncovering involves a kingdom that built walls so advanced that modern architects still cannot explain how they were constructed. And nobody has told it the way we are about to tell it.